Hello, Nar from Narfsounds and the Kronos Enthusiast Workshops here. Today I'll be talking about the wave sequence function of the Korg Kronos and the Korg Nautilus. In the beginning of the video, I show different examples of how wave sequencing can be applied. So you could play a single note and you can hear a full melody come out of the keyboard. You could play chords and have evolving pads or rhythmic pads play back. Or you can also do a round robin sort of effect where you're going through different samples every time you play the key. So here I've got an initialized program. It's an initialized HD1 program where the wave sequence function can be found. Press this to access the multi-sample. So we can see here it says multi-sample and it's just a piano sound. But if I touch that arrow, I can also choose a wave sequence. So that's the wave sequence, and you can see it's changed here as well. When I touch this arrow, I can access a list of internal wave sequences, and this goes from 0 to 149. So there's actually 150 internal wave sequences in the Kronos and in the Nautilus. And in the internal bank, a lot of these wave sequences are the same ones found in the Korg wave station from the 80s. And aside from that, you have 14 user banks that are 32 slots each, and this is where you can edit and create your own wave sequences. Let me choose user CC, just a random one, and user CC0 is going to be my initialized wave sequence. And let me just choose that. So I'm in program mode and I chose an initialized wave sequence. If I go to global mode, it'll take me to this page, and to access the wave sequences I go here. So this is where the wave sequences are stored, and this is where they can be edited and saved. If I press this tab, I'll find two tabs that are related to this function: sequence parameter and step parameter. Here we have the settings relating to the wave sequence, and here we have the actual steps of the wave sequence. When I play an init wave sequence, all I'll get is just one sound that will repeat itself, right? And the reason behind that is because it only has a single step and it has a single loop step as well. And we look here, you can see that the run box is ticked. That means that the wave sequence will actually continue playing. If I press that, it'll stop. It just plays whatever step within the sequence is selected. So the step sequence can be absolute or relative. So it can be set to time, so you can give a precise time value, or it can be relative, where you can have a time value relating to the BPM. So you can have note values in the steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a simple melody with the wave sequence, and I'm going to choose 8 steps for my wave sequence. So I'm going to set this from start from 1 to 8. And the loop start step will be 1, and loop end step will be 8, right? So now if I play this, it'll still play one note, and it's the same note, but it's actually going through 8 different steps. And you can actually see it here that the wave sequence has expanded from 1 to 8. And this one actually goes all the way to 64, right? And to actually set any pitch values, I can go to the step parameter. I'm going to create a very basic melody, something like Mary Had a Little Lamb. So these are the actual steps from 1 to 8. And you can see that they're all multi-samples. If you want to change that, it can be a rest or a tie as well, if you want to create rhythmic patterns. And right here we have ROM-M. That's the source of the multi-sample. It can be from ROM. It could be from RAM. It could be whatever is in your sampling mode. It could be expansion samples, EXS multi-samples right here. And you can also find ones that you've installed or created yourself. So in this case, I have my library called the 80s Booster V2 from the Narfsounds library right there. So all of these can be accessed right here. So I'll just keep it simple and just choose whatever is already there. So acoustic piano is the wave or the multi-sample. I can open that and you can see that it reveals more sounds. You can see that it's the same ones when you go to a program. So you can actually reverse the sample as well. If I press that, it's actually flipping the wave, and I can transpose each step, and this is how I create a melodic line. I'm just going to keep all of these to acoustic piano, and I'm just going to change the pitch values of each step. So to create Mary Had a Little Lamb, you go, okay, so it's just those 3 notes. When you transpose, the melody that plays will be relative to the note that you'll be playing. So if I want to play a C, for example, this middle C, I want the first note to be an E. I have to transpose that first note, that first step, to 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is 4 semitones. And my second step will be the D. So that's 1, 2, 2 semitones. And the third step will be whatever note I'll be playing. So I'm going to keep that at 0. And I can change that. It goes back to the second note, which is the D, and that's a whole step. That note is going to be the E again. And this step will also be 4. And 4. So that's how you create a melody out of that, by just transposing this bit. Now, what if you want to change the rhythm? So you can change the duration of each note. Again, if you have time selected, you have a precise time value measured in milliseconds. If you have tempo selected, this will be relative to the tempo that's selected within the program. So even if you're auditioning this in the wave sequence section, it has inherited whatever tempo was in the program that's selected in program mode. So I'm going to change that. Say if I want to make that from eighth notes to quarter notes. So I have these values here which can divide or double the duration. So if I divide that, it's gone to 16th notes, and that one's gone to 32nd notes. If I go the other way, I can even go slower. So that's how that's done. And if you want to prolong each note, there is a times value, and you can multiply that by a factor of 1 to 32. Okay, so you can also hold that. Now, if you want a rest instead of a note to play, you can change it here, like I saw earlier. So let's make the 8th step a rest instead, and I can choose a rest. It actually blanks out that line, but you still have a time value right here, right? And you can also create a tie if you want to extend that value. So each step can also crossfade into the next step. So that's what these millisecond values are. So you can have a smooth transition to the next note. So if we do that, we'll slow down the attack value of each one. And I'm just putting in random values here. So that's how that sounds like. And we have the fade in and fade out shape. And there is also an AMS out, which you can use to affect other parameters later on in the HD1. Okay, so that's how that's set up. So that's an example of how you create a melodic wave sequence. And of course, to save that, all we need to do is write wave sequence, and we can save it in an init wave sequence slot. So now I'm going to create a rhythmic wave sequence. So again, we're here in the wave sequence section. I'm going to change this mode from time to tempo, and I'm going to choose 8 steps and end it with 8 steps as well, and go to step parameter. Now, instead of changing the note value by transposing it, I won't touch that. All I'll do is change the rhythm value. So let's say I'll start off with an 8th note to a 16th note, and I can just select that and go up or down using the increment and decrement buttons. And I'm just putting in random note values, and when I play a chord, that's what I get. Okay, and again, if you go to program mode and if you have this wave sequence selected, you now have access to more parameters. So this is where you actually access and play the wave sequence. Now, if I want to put in some effects to this, I will edit whatever changes I want in the actual program. So let's put in some rhythmic delay, right? And okay, so that's how you create a rhythmic type wave sequence. And now let's create something else. So this time I'm going to create an evolving wave sequence. I'll choose an init wave sequence. Again, change this to tempo. And I'm just going to go 8 steps again. And step parameter is where I'm going to put in the actual multi-samples. And let's go and choose some strings. So maybe I'll just go for an ensemble strings. Right. I'm going to double the time value so it's slower. So let's go double that. So now they'll be changing in steps of half notes. And we're going from strings to choir. I'm going to choose a choir sound. And I'm looking for sounds that have a long duration. Synth string as the source. And just fill this up with different sounds. Maybe a woodwind as well. So. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some crossfade values so that it's a smooth change. So it's measured in milliseconds. So now it's a nice evolving pad. So I'm going to choose this evolving wave sequence in a program. So here we are. Let me just press that and choose wave sequence and choose what we just did. That was the one. And here we go. So your wave sequence just follows the same rules as though it was a multi-sample. So it will respond to the envelope. So if I touch this one, that's the amp envelope, and increase the time value, the time attack, and the release time, and apply a bit of filter to it. And I may even put in some LFO in there. So LFO modulation, intensity, and slow down that LFO. There you go. So now we have an evolving. And of course I can slow down the tempo here. And maybe let's add in some effects. Let's in IFX1. Let's put in some chorus, stereo chorus, and make that super chorus. And then let's chain that to the next. Let's put in some reverb or delay. Let's go delay, BPM delay. And let's put in some reverb, overb. There you go. And now we have a nice evolving pad. So now I'm going to create a conditional wave sequence wherein the wave will change depending on what gestures I do on the keyboard. So it could be the knob, it could be a slider, it could be the joystick, the ribbon, or whatever other controller there is. So here we are again, an init wave sequence, and I'm going to go and choose 8 steps, and the loop step is until 8 as well. And I'm going to choose some random waves. So now I've chosen different multi-samples here. What I'm going to do is disable the run parameter, disable that, and I'm going to tick this note advance option. And what that does is every time you play the keyboard, it will go to a different step. There you go, note advance. So now, if I play this, play it again, it's a different sound, it's a different step. So every time I play the keyboard, I'm playing a different step. Now, to make this even more interesting, I can go here to position and choose a controller. And when I use that controller, it will jump to a different step. So let's say I want to use the joystick. If I use joystick JSX, meaning it's a horizontal movement, right? And I'm going to choose that, JSX. And intensity. So there's 8 steps. Maybe I'll just go up to 5. So what happens, every time I play, it's a different sound. But if I move this, it's going to jump 5 steps up or down. And I can change this. Maybe I want to use a knob instead. So real-time karma knobs, and go to knob 5. And now I can use that for my program. So again, I have an init program, choose wave sequence, and let's go here. Put in some effects. Over. There you go. So now I'll just have a bit of a play with this. And if I'm happy with all those settings, I can just go ahead and save this wave sequence. Just go write wave sequence and rename, and I'll call this demo wave sequence. And press OK. And once that's done, there it is. It's now the demo wave sequence. And if I go back to the program, it's also there, demo wave sequence. If I want to change the look of this, I just go to basic vector, program basic, and instead of multi-sample wave sequence and drum kit names, I can just choose a picture instead. So let's go single wave or something like that, right? And now that's got the picture. So those are the basics of wave sequencing. I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching. See ya. Bye.